The Florida Gators are an elite basketball team, but just how far can they make it?
You are Locked On Gators, your daily podcast on the Florida Gators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Joining me now for Locked On Gators is Isaac Schade of Locked On Tar Heels, Locked On College Basketball. And Isaac, I have to ask you right now, because I'm going to disagree with you if I don't like the answer. Who do you think is the best team in the country right now in college basketball?
Well, Florida is in that conversation. I'll say
Go
it
ahead.
that way too.
Say Auburn. Say Auburn, because my team beat them. So say it.
Florida did beat Auburn in Auburn, and that is a massive thing. That said, I do think they're the best team in the nation. And honestly, I don't think it's close. I mean, it is absurd what they've done today, which, let's flip it back to the Gators, makes that win massive. Like, that is one of the few best wins in the country this season, along with, by the way, what just happened Wednesday night in the same state in Tuscaloosa. My man, B.O., let's go.
Yeah. Hey, look, and I would say this as well. Florida Gators women's basketball beat Auburn and Alabama. So the Florida Gators own the state of Alabama.
That's right.
Who's
the governor of Alabama? He needs to hand the keys over to Gainesville, basically.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That they got to do that. Also, I will say it makes a lot of sense for Auburn to be the best team in the country. I don't actually really push back on that because Auburn's basketball team, they are about the same age as guys who have been in the NBA for 6 years. So they should be better because they're playing college age athletes. So we're gonna dunk on them a little bit.
Yo, Kay Ivey. Kay Ivey is the governor of Alabama. Folks, write into her. Let her know what needs to happen.
Kay Ivey needs to do the right thing.
That's right. She's been overtaken. She's been surmounted, and she needs to recognize it and own it. It's just it's reality.
Hey, I don't know if you want to give the key to Scott Strickland or if you want to give it to Todd Golden and Kelly Ray Finley. They could split it. I don't know how you want to do that, but they own Alabama now. I feel like in the past week or so, we've seen, or really the past few weeks, we've seen 5 or 6 teams in the 1 seed conversation, and obviously Florida still has a game tonight, and so we don't know everything that's going to be settled. But right now, who do you think the 1 seeds should be, or who do you think they would be if we went right now and set the brackets?
I love putting it that way because it's always so important to timestamp it because things really can change quickly. Because when we get to this point, we're talking about a bunch of good teams, and we got to nitpick to figure out who those are. And so, Brandon, in order for me right now, I mean, we just said it. I think Auburn is the best team in the nation. I know they lost the other night again. I know they have a game tonight, but they could lose today at home to Bama. They could lose their quarterfinal game on, I guess it would be Friday of the SEC tournament, and they have a big enough lead that they would still be the number 1 overall team. Like, that's how set apart their resume is. Number 2 right now is Duke. Obviously, they got to take care of business in Chapel Hill tonight. And then we've got the ACC tournament next week. I think because of the relative weakness of the ACC, they've either got to win tonight or win the ACC tournament to hold on to that. But right now they're number 2 overall, so they could slip a little bit. Number 3 is Houston, man. They've come on strong, won the Big 12 championship outright again by multiple games for the 2nd year in a row. They lead the nation in defensive points allowed per game for the 2nd year. I mean, it's crazy what Kelvin Sampson's doing. So they're number 3 for me right now. And then there's a mix, 3 other SEC teams for that 4th seed. It's Tennessee, it's Alabama, and it's your fighting Florida Gators, the Todd Goldens. Last Saturday, because of that Jameer Myshak buzzer beater, I think a lot of people had Tennessee as that final 1 seed. There's a time when Alabama was number 2 or 3 overall. They've fallen off a little bit because of this crazy schedule they had to close the season. So, Brandon, when you look at a team that went to Auburn and won, you look at a team that went to Alabama, to Tuscaloosa and won, and you look at a team that, yes, lost in Knoxville pretty handily to a shorthanded Vols team, but then obliterated them even worse in Gainesville, the 4th number 1 seed right now, BO, the Florida Gators.
Yeah, I mean, we've looked at Bracket Matrix, or bracketmatrix.com, which thank you very much for putting me onto.
You're
But right
welcome.
now they've got Auburn, Duke, Houston. Their average seed 1.00. Like it's them, and then you got Florida, Alabama, Tennessee, and they are average seeds. Florida's 1.46, Alabama 1.76, and Tennessee 1.78. Like they are the three that are sorting it out. But I do think that, like you mentioned, Florida, they destroyed Tennessee when Tennessee was number one. They beat Auburn at Auburn. And I feel like just looking at those two and then beating Alabama, like I feel like when you look at the top wins, Florida has to be that. Like
Oh,
Florida has to go, hey, we've got those top wins. Not really many bad losses for Florida. I mean, you had
I would
the
say no
the
bad losses,
yeah,
Brandon.
the
Like,
Tennessee game was a blowout, but
yeah,
Tennessee was still top 5, if I'm not
yeah,
mistaken, when
yeah,
that game got played.
yeah.
Missouri, you lost by 1. You lost to Kentucky at Kentucky,
Georgia at
and
Georgia.
Georgia at Georgia.
And I think they're pretty safely in now. So it's all to tournament team. I mean, and 3 on the road, the 1 game at home to a Missouri team who is wildly better this year. I got no problems, no qualms with anything on Florida's resume. Plus the big time wins that you talked about. So it's full. Top end is great. The wins and losses are all understandable. Top 10 in offense and defensive adjusted. I mean, if Florida's got everything you need to be a 1 seed.
Which it's incredible how high ranked they are in defensive efficiency, because you watch a game and I feel like there's a lot of games where I'm like, they're just not trying at this point. And that is incredibly frustrating, which we'll talk about that in a couple
Sure,
minutes.
sure.
Before we get to that, I wanted to ask you how you view Florida, or if you view them as a legitimate national championship contender, or is this one of those times where we go, they're great in the regular season, but don't know if they're truly built to win it all, which, before viewers get mad, I'm not saying I feel that way about them, but we got to ask, right? We,
Right.
we have to ask that one.
Yeah, I absolutely do. Very honestly, Brandon, and not like I have been saying this and will continue to say it. It's not just because I'm here hanging out with you. What you need in March is a diverse roster that can win against any playing style, any other roster construction, right? Like whatever's thrown at you in those 6 games, where one game that's a bad matchup for your team can lose. Like, let's take Alabama, for example. One of the things that's known about the Nate Oates era is they just bomb away from 3, right? More often than not, because of the sheer volume, if they, like the other day, they hit 22 out of 45 threes, you're not going to beat them on one of those nights. But if it's one of those other nights where they're not doing that, they're susceptible. Now, I know Todd Golden and the Gators like to bomb away a little bit as well, but I feel like there is more that rounds out Florida's capability. So there's this loaded backcourt, which is to me, that is the thing more than anything else that I need in March, is a team that has great guard play. And you look at that 3-headed combo of Walter Clayton, Elijah Martin, and Will Richard, and dude, it's just like, I put that up against any trio in the country, and we'll go to war, man. I if I'm Todd Golden, I feel great about that. I think here's the linchpin in it for me is Alex Condon, right? And I know we need to talk more about him, but how back is he, right? I know as we talk, he's 3 games back, 2 off the bench, and then just started right against Bama on Wednesday. So that's an encouraging sign to me. I just want to see him keep taking steps to get back in game flow, both tonight and then next week in the SEC tournament. But you do that, and then how many teams around the country could say, oh, we had a 7-1 center named Micah, and he just decided out of the goodness of his heart to come make this team more freaking awesome than it already is. And then you add in Tommy Hawk and Denzel Aberdeen and Ruben and all, and dude, it's just like Florida's got it all, BO. And I don't, it's one of those things where I don't want to build it up and then Florida loses in the second round. It's like, but Isaac said, I don't like, that's March, man. It happens. But do they have the capability? 100% they do.
Yeah, I would die for Micah Hanlockton. I just want to throw that out there. That's like one of the most selfless things I've ever
Dude.
seen, of someone going, "Hey, injuries piled up. You need me? I'm back. Screw the medical red shirt."
And think about what that says to the rest of the team. Like, not just his selfish act, but that kind of thing spreads, man, like a good virus. That's not even a thing, but you know what I mean?
It is now. It
Yeah.
is now. He's got the good virus. We're calling it hand-logged, that's it. That's the virus. But we
Oh,
are
excuse me, I've got the hand locked in.
Oh, you lucky son of a. I'm not going to say the rest. Don't worry. But we are going to talk more about this. I mean, look, we're going to be honest. Tremendous Florida Gators team, tremendous Florida Gators roster when we get back with Locked On Gators. Life moves fast, especially when you have a family. One day you're watching your kids take their first steps. Before you know it, they're off to college, and that's why securing their future is so important. Fabric by Gerber Life makes it simple to get term life insurance that fits your family's needs. With Fabric, you can apply for term life insurance online, right from your couch, from your bed, from your office, wherever you want. You can be covered in under 10 minutes, and in many cases, no health exam is required. Join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to help protect their families. Apply today in just minutes at meetfabric.com/lockedoncollege. That's meetfabric.com/lockedoncollege. Policies issued by Western Southern Life Assurance Company. Not available in certain states. Prices subject to underwriting and health questions. March basketball is here. The Florida Gators are elite and hopefully ending with the second most wins in regular season program history. Just saying, there's no better way to get in on the action than with Prize Picks, the best place for daily fantasy sports. With Prize Picks, you pick more or less on at least 2 player projections. Could be Walter Clayton threes, Alex Condon points, Micah Hanlock and offensive rebounds. Could be whatever you want. And if you're right, you can win up to 1,000 times your cash. It's fast, easy, and keeps every game exciting. Download the app today. Use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONCollege for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. Thanks for being Locked On Gators, your first listen of the day every day. We are available daily and free to listen to the podcast and on YouTube. We have Isaac Schade here of Locked On College Basketball, Locked On Tar Heels, and you obviously are the better basketball mind here. Who would have thought? But something that's been
It's okay. You slaughter me in football, so it's all fair.
You have Bill Belichick now. I don't know if my team would at this point. I'll give you that one. But something that's been a major concern of mine for this team, or I don't want to say major concern, but something that's been a concern of mine for this team, despite the wins, is that they seem hot and cold. Like even in their wins, it was South Carolina in I think it was late January, early February, where they didn't lead until there's 5 seconds left in the game. They took a lead with a layup with 5 seconds left, and they won the game, and everybody went, "Yay, you won the game!" But that was a South Carolina team that at the time hadn't won a single SEC game. That their last SEC win was against Florida last year in March. And so, yeah, so it was a win, but not a good win, not a fun win, still a win.
Sure.
And I think at this point, we talked about this a little bit off the air. I can't remember the last time that I've been able to say, hey, Walter Clayton Jr., Elijah Martin, and Will Richard have all showed up in the same game. So how concerning should that be, or how concerning is that for Florida Gators fans as we enter tournament season?
Yeah, I remember that 1-point win over South Carolina, 70-69 back on January 22nd. And I felt that a little bit too that night, Brandon. I was like, really? But like, here's the thing too. South Carolina has knocked off a couple bubble teams lately. They beat Texas at home. They obliterated the Slobber Hogs last Saturday with John Calipari coming to town. And so, look, I think South Carolina, just specific to that game, gets a bad rap because they and LSU are just the bottom dwellers of the SEC. But because of the depth of the SEC, they're still really strong basketball team. I mean, it's crazy. And so that one-off alone is not concerning to me. Let me frame the three-headed monster backcourt question a little bit differently, Brandon, is yes, when those three dudes are all cooking on the same night and all hitting, it's like, you are not going to beat Florida. I mean, it's just one of those things. Like we said about Alabama earlier, when they're raining threes, there's almost nothing you can do about it. The good thing is, because of the depth of Florida, Todd Golden doesn't even necessarily need them all to go off on any given night, right? As long as two of them are okay and, like Handlocked. Well, I guess Handlockton's not doing much yet, but like Tommy Hawk or Alex Condon, as long as enough of the guys are doing it on any given night. And that's the thing. When you have a three-headed monster like that, it's like that diversity helps so much, right? And so if it was just so reliant, let's say Walter Clayton was getting 25 a game and Elijah Martin was like 5 and Will Richards 7, that would be concerning, because then if Walter Clayton's off a night, it's like, well, maybe one of the. So it ultimately doesn't concern me. And Brandon, in some ways, you and I had talked about this some before, is like, it almost reminds me of the 07 Gators as they were trying to defend the 06 national championship, where it felt like a apex predator just messing with their prey in the regular season, because it's like, can we just get to postseason? We're ready to do what matters. But I mean, even still, look at this resume, man. It's bonkers. And so I know maybe at the micro level there is some frustration there, but at the macro level, Florida's getting it done. And I think ultimately that's what matters. The key is now, can they continue to do that in March, where I think they will run hot?
Yeah, I think when you look at this team, there's been one game where, or I'll say this, there haven't been many games where all three of them have shown up, but there's only been one game where none of them showed up, and that was the 64 or 66 to 44 loss
At
against Tennessee. That was brutal. Just none of them showed up at all.
Wait,
and that was the only time that
Yeah.
none of them really played well. They all shot poorly, and it was just brutal in that one. So I guess you could say
Walter Clayton was like the only double-digit score for the entire team that game, right?
Yep. Yeah.
He had 10.
I think he had 10. Yeah. He like barely hit double digits. It was a brutal.
That Tennessee defense, that was just a different day, man. That was nuts. Yeah.
And that's one of the things where, we've touched on, where it doesn't feel like this is a Florida Gators team that gets beat because, like they just can't play against a physical defense. They just can't play against a team that shoots a lot of threes. They just can't play against this kind of team. They just don't show up on some nights, and that's when they lose. Like this isn't a team that is just going to be beat by any specific skill set. It's just they're going to be beat when they don't show. Like they decide when they're getting beat.
That's right.
And
it's that classic cliche of who can beat Florida? Florida.
Yeah,
so
that's it.
You know what that is ultimately about to me is Todd Golden and how he and the staff prepare this team game in and game out. Something that spoke volumes to me, Brandon, and we don't need to litigate the Todd Golden stuff, but what I will say, and I think if I remember correctly, we texted a little bit about this at the time, is like, what impressed me so much was that the team seemed unaffected by it, man. When the news broke on whatever Friday that was, several months ago, just kept on trucking. When things were resolved or charges were dropped, just kept on trucking. And so what I've appreciated is the way the team has been able to be seemingly unaffected by any of that. That to me shows the maturity of these dudes in the locker room.
Yeah, I mean that's been the thing. They're mentally tough there, and again, it's just we're just waiting for the tournament to start. We've talked a lot about the guards. We touched a little bit on Alex Condon, but I did want to ask just how beneficial it is for the Florida Gators to have a team or have a player like Alex Condon, who, I mean, we saw it against Alabama. He went off. It was 27 points, and a lot of it was on
welcome back, sir.
Doing work. Yeah, it was. He's like, all right, I'm back in the lineup now. Which Todd Golden's done a good job of when a player gets banged up, feeling comfortable to say, hey, you're going to come off the bench for a little bit. We'll ease you in. Did it with Elijah Martin a few weeks ago when he got banged up and he hurt his hip. And then now with Alex Condon, it's the same thing. But how beneficial is it for Florida to have a big with specifically his passing and playmaking ability of Alex Condon? Because I feel like being able to say, hey, we've got a big that can shoot from up top and then also actually hit a cutter. I feel like that really helps Florida's attack of let's draw the big man out. Let's get some easy buckets down low.
Yeah, I guess it's a good thing to be Australian. I don't know. Like Alex Condon, legitimately, like one of the reasons people talk so much about Cooper Flagg is because he can do a little bit of everything. He's literally leading Duke in points, assists, rebounds, steals, and blocks. And that's not what Alex Condon's doing. But I say that to say Alex at 6'11", 230, oh, by the way, has this diversity of talent that when you look at some of the best players in all of basketball, and I'm thinking like Jokic here, right? Like, are big dudes who can do that. And that's Alex Condon. Yes, 11 points a game. Yes, just shy of 8 rebounds a game. That's what you expect from him. But the fact that he's dropping, or like just shy of 2.5 assists a game, 1.5 blocks a game, but he can shoot a little bit. I know he didn't take a ton of threes, but enough to be respectable where you got to step out on it and, oh, I might drive by, right? And so without him, that is a key component. That is what I like to say draws a lot of gravity. And that's what basketball is all about, is spacing. And Todd Golden, as an analytics guy, is all about that. And so his gravity has a lot of pull. And so when he's not out on the court, it makes things tougher for each of the other guys that is out on the floor. So Alex getting back, getting healthy, the diversity of skill sets and stat stuffing that he brings to any box score into the game is massively important. And then, oh, by the way, hey, Micah, why don't you then come in off the bench or wherever and get us about 8, 9, 10 rebounds? Maybe a bucket here or there is an icing on the cake, but it's just, man, I was worried when Alex Condon went down. I remember saying, if this is a long-term thing, Florida's ceiling just dropped massively. That's how important he is to me.
Yeah, he's hugely important to this team. And I mean, I feel like defensively, he brings a lot of presence as well that Florida doesn't have without him. Even like Micah Handlogton's done a good job, but Alex Condon, he has like the athleticism upside that Micah Handlogton doesn't, and that kind of adds to it. And I'm going to put you on the spot here as we end this show. And of course, like we've said before, we don't have a bracket made. We don't have any of that information available yet, and we won't know how healthy these teams will be, which is vitally important, as we just mentioned. But how deep of a run are the Florida Gators making this year, Isaac?
First off, I want to not miss what's going to happen next weekend. That Bama win was so important because it makes whatever happens tonight pointless from an SEC seeding standpoint. Allows the Gators to wrap up the 2 seed there, so that's big time. As for the NCAA tournament, yes, like you said, and like we talked about earlier, you got to win 6 games to win a national championship. And on any given night, literally anything can happen. Somebody can go crazy. Jack Golke last year, Oakland against Kentucky, right? Like, that lives in infamy because he just went nuclear on that thing. Florida, I think the floor is second weekend, which would be Sweet 16 Elite 8. Like, if you don't get out of the first weekend, I think that is the disappointment. I think Florida fans can and should expect that Final Four and national championship, either appearance or win, is a strong possibility. It's just, I mean, it just takes luck and breaks and all that. And so if I were calling it right now, I would say Final Four or bust for me if I'm the Florida Gators. Not again, I think you get to the Sweet 16, you get to the Elite 8, and you say, not what we wanted to do, but this was a wildly successful season. We were one of the final 8 teams in the country. But this is a team that can look back to, you know, the 06 and the 07 guys and say, hey, we want to be Joe Kim Noah. We want to be all those dudes. And it also helps that there's somebody sitting on that bench that was part of that run that can help with that as well, who's got his own troubles right now. But, you know, like Brandon, I will say Final Four bust for this team and put a stamp on it and like fully believe in that.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that because I did indeed bet on them making the Final Four before the season. And so
I bet you got great odds on that, dude.
I got plus 1,600 on them making the Final Four, and then I think I got plus 4,500 on them winning the national championship. I think I'll double check that right now as we're here. But yeah, no, it definitely was great. Day before the season started, I bet Florida to make the Final Four, and that was plus 1,500, and then plus 6,000 for Florida to win the national championship. So
okay, well, you know, I'm looking at where it is right now today. Final Four is plus 140.
Yep.
National champion, they are plus 750. So, dude, you got phenomenal value there.
Yeah, the cash outs are very favorable right now. I'm not touching it though. Scared money don't make money. That's how we live it here with the Florida Gators. I know that's a football saying, but we're sticking with it with basketball, so that's how we're going. But thank you so much, Isaac. This is Isaac Schade, Locked On College Basketball, Locked On Tar Heels. catch him every day and catch him with fantastic tournament coverage for where the Florida Gators will hopefully be making a deep run.